recording then.
Okay.
Well, welcome everyone back to a DSCS Criminology web series. I am here with Alex, and Alex, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to finally do an interview with the Deakin Criminology Student Society. If I've got that right, sorry.
It's a big name.
So a little bit about myself. I'm a late phase PhD student now, technically PhD graduate in criminology at Deakin. I've done the Deakin undergrad, the honors, and the PhD all the way throughout Deakin for the past 8-9 years, ever since high school, when left at the start of 2015. So I submitted my PhD earlier this year. I've passed. Imagine literally clicking submit on a 100,000 word dissertation is it's quite an enigmatic feeling. But my main research area is green criminology, which refers to the study of environmental crime and harm. So for those watching, you may have had me as a tutor, maybe at some point over the course of your criminological studies. But given the diversity of the natural environment itself, from grasslands, forests, marine or aquatic ecosystems, and the kinds of harms that are inflicted on each of them, marine pollution, illegal dumping, bit of carbon pollution or climate change material. I'd love to focus on all of them, maybe one day. But for the PhD, I've purely focused on corporate water theft in Australia, specifically the Murray-Darling Basin, Australia's largest and most regulated freshwater river system, spanning 5 states: Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, ACT, and Victoria. So for the past 4 to 5 years, I've basically just been looking at the issue of water theft in Australia, answering very simple research questions such as who is stealing water, how and why is it being stolen, how can it be prevented, or what are some of the risk factors and causes of this environmental crime as well. And basically, just one of the main findings that I've come across from the PhD is that a culture of over-extraction, mismanagement, and malfeasance predicated on decades of exploitation and harmful water policy since European settlement has basically established or given rise to the state-facilitated theft of water. So for those that have done crim theory yet, or for those that you eventually do criminology theory in your second year, there's a theory that one of my favorite theories within critical criminology, or like crimes of the powerful, one of my main research areas, that's called state corporate crime, that refers to collusive arrangements and practices between state and corporate actors in order to undertake harm or socially injurious actions, largely in the pursuit for profit, greed, and power. So there's this element of state corporate water theft up in the northern Murray-Darling Basin. It's large, but it's quite a powerful but small group of corporate irrigators, names unknown, that have been legally and illegally stealing water for at least the better part of the last few decades. There's this really interesting social phenomena or perspective in the Northern Basin that water theft is a socially acceptable behavior, or kind of a rite of passage for many for many irrigators in general, making it kind of stems from the characteristics or the development of a pervasive agrarian discourse or society. So agrarian basically just referring to agricultural societies that kind of built the backbone or the social fabric of Australia since European settlers arrived. But in doing so, obviously have dispossessed First Nations groups and communities of their access and land to water as well. So we've got this is kind of the corporate element behind this water theft. If ever since 2017, the ABC premiered a documentary called Pumped that highlighted such acts of corporate water theft happening within the Northern Basin. And since then, there's been multiple media reports of whenever someone's stealing water, it's in the millions of liters. It's largely either within the mining industry or the cotton industry, a number of different industries. There's no just one particular kind of offender. So that's been happening for a while, but that's also being facilitated or co-opted by the neoliberal politics of the national government. Sorry, not the national, of the New South Wales government. Allegedly, obviously everything I'm talking about here is theoretical or from the perspectives of interview perspective or participants that I've spoken to. But it's being facilitated allegedly by the New South Wales government purely, and how do they go about doing this? So again, there's multiple media reports of New South Wales water ministers or bureaucrats personally lifting embargoes or water restrictions for very few select corporate irrigators upstream, changing water policy and trying to license floodplain harvesting. And that's the major archetype of institutionalized water theft in Australia. When it rains, obviously it's not just in the riverbanks. We've all heard about the floods in New South Wales and Queensland over the past couple of years. So naturally that water would correlate and combine firstly that water would overbank, it would spread onto the floodplains, which are next to the river. The media would often refer to this as a natural disaster, which at least from my perspective is not true, because that land has always been floodplains prior to European settlement or anything being built on them. That water would go into the floodplains, it would support the wildlife, support the ecosystems, it would recede, it would combine and correlate into the Darling River that flows from New South Wales down to Mildura in Victoria, and then eventually out into South Australia, into the ocean. But basically, in terms of floodplain harvesting, you've got legal water theft and illegal water theft, or big diversions or floodplain. Let me rephrase that. State corporate actors harvesting and impounding unmetered, unregulated, and unlicensed floodplain waters, largely for the past 20 to 30 years. It goes back further than that, but it's really escalated in the past few decades. So that state corporate water theft stuff upstream, coupled with drought, has led to a decline of inland flows downstream. And in doing so, sparked the death of millions of native fish. What I'm referring to here is largely the 2019 Menindee fish kills, where millions of native fish died within a lack of flowing water. They were trapped within pools, stratified pools, where algal blossoms bloomed. Took the oxygen out of the water, and then they were trapped, because of what makes a river healthy is an ongoing flow of water. Also led to desertification of the river system. It went completely drying. I remember pulling up to Menindee Lakes, expecting to see like what is a beautiful freshwater inland ocean almost, or lake, when you can't actually see the other side. Instead, it was empty. It was a dust bowl, and it was honestly, as someone quite passionate for environmental protection, conservation, and so forth, or green criminology in general, it was really quite a heartbreaking sight to see. But I still love doing the field work. Nonetheless, it's also got to the point where farmers or other residents throughout the rural community started committing suicide over a lack of access to water. So within an urban environment like this, we do take fresh water for granted, this tap on, tap off mentality. But within the outback, or just rural Australia in general, it's a completely different story. The social and economic health or well-being of a rural community is embedded in the health of the river system. If they don't have the water if they don't have the access to the water they need, obviously they can't water their crops to make a financial living. They can't use the water for their livestock, so they'll eventually die out. They can't use it for their own domestic usage. It's got to the point where rural communities have had to truck in water from major capital cities across Australia, largely Melbourne, Adelaide, or Sydney, kind of in the form of community donations. So that was largely throughout 2016 to 2020, 2021. Obviously, we've had a lot more rain since then. Water theft has still gone on in that time, but we're still expecting droughts and massive heat waves to come back. So in which, obviously, as water becomes more limited, it creates more opportunities for crime or well, water theft in this case. So that's the premise or what I've been focusing on for this thesis. As a criminology student, I've had to engage. There's been like a couple of really overwhelming things at the start when I started. Firstly, fresh water is essential to everything. It's essential to every discipline, to every industry, and so forth. So my research and writing and thesis and so forth was very multidisciplinary. I ended up pulling stuff from law, economics, hydrology. What else? A lot of political stuff as well. A number of different disciplines in order to understand how the river system is, how the river works, how it's managed, and so forth. A lot of research material outside the scope of a common criminological discourse. Secondly, the area that I ended, or the case study or the exploratory study that I worked in, being the Murray-Darling Basin, it's a freshwater river system that spans five domestic jurisdictions, and in doing so has their own different water frameworks or their own water laws and water legislations and penalties in each of them. And having to understand that, there's a lot of social and political tension across the basin. The Murray-Darling Basin Plan, which was created in 2012, $13 billion in taxpayer funds, the largest environmental restoration project in Australia's history, is meant to have delivered, I think, around between 2,000 to 2,750 gigaliters of water back to the environment. Gigaliters referring to like 1 billion liters of water. So like a shitload of amount of water.
Yeah.
But that's nearing completion in the end of next year or sometime in the next year. And only 4 to 5% of that water has been delivered back. So, yes. So water theft is a very small part of this. There's a far broader range of other social, economic, and political issues that are affecting the river system. But the main point comes down to is that it's just human interference and or artificial interference. Humans are now controlling. Sorry, let me rephrase. First Nations peoples and communities have resided and sustained alongside the river system for thousands of years through its own what we call its ecocentric or its intrinsic or ecological value. But ever since European settlement, or now in this post-colonial era, water is just a commodity. It's commodified, it's traded, it's exploited, and the river system is interrupted largely for profit. So there's a lot of themes within green criminology that kind of tie to how freshwater is managed or commodified. Largely, another area is called water crime that consists of other several types. So water terrorism, water fraud, water cyber attacks, water corruption, water theft, and a few more. So I first just before the PhD, first came across the environmental crime stuff in ACR 101, like for many of you students have as well. I first entered Crim wanting to do customs and border protection, came across the environmental crime stuff and absolutely fell in love with the topic. So I ended up pursuing that for the next few years. That was the only week at the time that focused on environmental crime in the entire Crim discipline. There was no one in faculty or staff that focused in this area at that time either. There are a couple now. So I use the flexibility of the undergraduate assignments to kind of tailor it to an environmental topic or an environmental premise. So I remember when it came to crime and media, like I looked at media depictions of the 2010 BP oil disaster. When it came to ACR 301 transnational crime, choosing our topic there. What I looked at, like illegal e-waste dumping across borders. I looked at some eco-Marxist theory for Crim theory. I harnessed the flexibility of a wide range of different undergraduate topics and assignments and so forth to increase my knowledge about environmental crime. In addition, I undertook a couple of electives within the environmental science and management department just to get some additional knowledge. But by the time of my undergrad in 2017, I knew that I wanted to know more. I knew I wanted to know a lot more about this topic. So that's why I decided to pursue honors. Sorry. So I highly recommend postgraduate study for anyone watching or just anyone in general, because it gives you the opportunity to focus on a topic of your choosing whilst working with a supervisor that has or another lecturer that has relevant experience in that area as well. So for honors, I wanted to look into some air pollution stuff or climate change. So I ended up focusing on Victoria's carbon footprint of crime. So the main findings I came across that was there was around just under 500,000 ton of carbon emissions released from common criminal offence types such as homicide, burglary, drug consumption, and so forth, and criminal justice system expenditures, police, prisons, and so forth, between 2016 and 2017 that went back into the atmosphere towards climate change. So there are some studies that have shown, there's multiple studies that have shown that hot weather or climate change exacerbates the opportunities and the consequences for crime. I love that kind of thing, the environmental links between criminal behavior and the broader environment. It's absolutely fascinating. But what my honors thesis, it kind of did the reverse. It was going from the effects of crime back into climate change, or at least back into the air that we breathe. Came to the end of my honors. Still wanted to know more. The first day of my honors supervisor asked me, "So do you want to do a PhD next year?" Never having thought about it before, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I just like the title of doctor sounds so sounds very good. So yeah, came to the end of honors, wanting to do a PhD, but the thing is, I knew that I was on the right track. I like compared to a lot of other people that I've met who have done this course whilst I was studying, or have done it prior, or something like that. They were still in the jobs that they didn't like, or the jobs that they hated. So I kind of told myself, if I'm going to, spend my life working, I want to do something that I'm interested in, and obviously want to get paid well for it, as in order to survive with today's increasing inflation, costs in living, and all that kind of thing. So I knew I was on the right track. So, and at least compared to my age, compared to other people my age or my generation, not a lot of other people could say that. At least that's from my perspective, or at least from what I've been told. And I know the timing was perfect, because at the time I finished my honors, there was this international professor. Some of you other students may have had him, Professor Rhys Waters, who was coming to Deakin and was looking for PhD students. And he's focuses on crimes of the powerful, water crime, green criminology, the whole shebang. So we met up, had a fantastic introduction and discussion, and he ended up becoming my first PhD supervisor, or my primary supervisor. So that was an amazing, kind of more of a coincidence for me personally. It was I'm not a religious person at all. I'm honestly kind of very critical of religion, but I obviously open to broader things. It was kind of more of a coincidence for me. It's this kind of like universal, or this enigmatic sign that I'm on the right path. So so Rhys was my primary supervisor. I've also had Dr. Ian Warren and Dr. Laura Bedford as my associate supervisors throughout my PhD as well. Absolutely fantastic team. They provided so many amazing insights for my development as an early career researcher and academic. But that's kind of my past. Did the PhD. Talking about the next sign of knowing I'm on the right path, after about a third or a fourth attempt, once I finished, as I was nearing completion of the PhD, we've received a grant from the Australian Research Council that focuses on preventing water theft in the Murray-Darling Basin. So for the next 3 years, literally like starting on this Monday, I'll be working as a senior research associate on one of the first green criminology projects funded in Australia, and that will also be with the supervisors that I've did my PhD for, with Reese and Laura, and also Rob White, Professor Rob White at the University of Tasmania. All of these individuals were some of the names I started reading in the literature as an undergrad, to now being able to work and collaborate with them and publish with them as well was such a huge achievement for myself. So I've been really, really privileged to have worked with these amazing people. So yeah, we'll be focusing on preventing water theft for the next, gone from the PhD, the topic, continuing with the topic, but now on a broader scale. And then obviously in the meantime, just a whole bunch of sessional teaching and marking throughout. I've taught or lectured in, between 10 to 12 different criminology subjects in the past 4 or 5 years, both at Victoria University and Deakin. So that's been my life as an early career academic and researcher for the past 4 or 5 years. Very research and teaching based, but that's just the benefit of criminology. A lot of the stuff I learned within teaching, I brought back into the PhD, and I bring a lot of the references from the PhD back into the classroom to help students expand their insights or inform discussions or anything like that. I've learned more. It's weird. I've learned more as a tutor in criminology teaching compared to an undergrad, because I'm consistently applying this knowledge over and over again. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. That's what I'll be doing for the next few years. Sorry to talk your ears off.
Don't be. It sounds very exciting, and it's green criminology isn't 100% my interest, but it is very fascinating to hear other people talk about it. And like water theft, I never knew about that really. And corporate water theft and all that, and like the fact that you're going to be researching further from a government grant is truly amazing, because it's not every day that opportunity comes up. So I think I'm very excited for you, and I can't wait to read it when it comes out.
Yeah, I'll still got to go through the library and all that, but it'll eventually
It'll still be fun
on the Deakin library. Yep.
it'll be so good.